I am Dave Thomas talking with Ann Gigante about her book, Voiceless Child. This is part two, for those of you who would like more details. I see after Heather began living with your family, Ann, what was one of your biggest struggles that took place?
When Heather first came home, she was about 18 months old. And the scary thing about a child who breathes through a tracheotomy tube in their neck is that they still get mucus like a child who, any other child. Other children get boogers in their nose, and she would get mucus in her trach, and any plugging of the trach tube would cause her to suffocate, as she would have no alternative way to breathe or acquire oxygen. So when she first came home, we had nurses watch over her at night until we became more comfortable with her care.
Well, there's a process that was required for you to adopt her. What was that?
Jim and I lived in the state of Florida, and Heather was a ward of the state, so we had to go through the state's process for adoption. We filled out an application. They reviewed the application. They did background checks. They checked out our employment and finances. We had to take pictures of our home. Our two biological children had to write letters to the child, Heather. And then we attended a series of adoption parenting classes offered by the state of Florida, which was called Health and Rehabilitative Services at the time.
Okay, well, what hopes, Ann, did you have for her?
At first, we wanted Heather just to survive. She was so ill and required so much care. Each day we thought, oh, she lived this day. Okay, she'll live one more day. And then she lived 1 week, and we thought, oh, she'll live one more week. And then we thought, wow, what if she could have it all? What if she could get healthy, meaning what if she could actually talk? What if she could actually swim? I hadn't told you about it yet, but with a trach tube, there's no way to hold your breath underwater. If little Heather ever fell into water, it would be instant drowning, as her lungs would fill with water. We live in Florida, enjoy boating in the ocean. We kept dreaming, what if she could get healthy? What if we could find someone who could fix her airway so she could swim, so she could talk?
Wow. If she couldn't talk, how did you communicate?
At first, she was too ill to even consider communicating, but then as she got older and got stronger, we started using sign language, and she picked up on moving her little fingers pretty quickly. We carried a sign language book with us everywhere, and the idea of learning how to sign fast enough to keep up with her need to communicate was overwhelming. And we thought, what if she never could talk? Where would she fit in as an adult when she was a hearing person who communicated with sign language? Kind of cute when she did get healthier and could move about. If she wanted to go for a walk or go outside, she would go to all our closets and get our shoes, and she would throw them at our feet because she knew we only put our shoes on when when we went somewhere or went outside. The other thing that happened she learned how to do was she could put her chin down to block the trach tube in her neck, and it would just sputter a sound out like an elephant trumpeting, and it backfired one time when her older sister Jamie was in the finalist in a spelling bee, and in the middle of all that quiet, Heather decided to trumpet like an elephant. So definitely I took her outside.
How did you go about finding a surgeon who could fix her airway?
It was before computers, so Jim and I went to the medical library and we researched all different kinds of medical articles. We found one by Dr. Robin Cotton. He is the surgeon who created an airway reconstructive procedure called laryngotracheoplasty. And this procedure, the surgeon harvests a segment of the child's own rib cartilage and whittles it into a diamond shape. And the surgeon incises the airway or trachea and splits it open and sews the piece of rib cartilage into the trachea. The beauty of this procedure is that that cartilage graft grows with the child as the child gets older. The surgeon who actually did her surgery was Dr. Bruce Mattern. He lives in Jacksonville, Florida. At the time, only less than 30 surgeons in the whole world could do the procedure.
Well, what did he say when you first made an appointment with him?
He said it was important to determine whether her lungs were healthy enough to get the trach tube out, because it's way easier to breathe, a lot less effort and strength to breathe through a hole in your neck than through your nose. But he thought that she was a good candidate, and it just felt like Christmas because I just couldn't even imagine. I began dreaming that she could get this tube out, she could talk, and she could swim. The scary thing when they do this airway reconstruction is they put a stent tube in while it heals, which makes her airway even more crowded. You have to be more diligent in keeping her airway open. And then when it had healed and when he did take the trach tube out, there would be two things that would happen. Either her airway would stay open or it might collapse, and that would be an emergency.
Whoa. Well, how old was she when all this took place? And after the surgery, how long did it take for her to breathe more normally, for her, to start talking?
When she first had the trach tube removed, the word mama slipped out of her mouth, and it had a surprising outcome. It frightened her, and it frightened her so much that she kept her mouth tightly shut and refused to let any sound come out of her mouth. The stalemate broke when we took her to Sebastian Inlet. And Sebastian Inlet, there's a long concrete pier with grates, and you walk out to the end to go fishing, and the waves splash up under and splashed up on her, and she just started laughing. And after that, she started talking, and we had an aide of a speech therapist. She worked with her twice a week for a year to help her learn how to talk. But between age 3 and age 4, she caught up to her peers in her ability to speak verbally.
Well, during this process time, when all this was going on, what was your profession and what was your husband's profession?
When I met little Heather, I was a labor and delivery nurse, and Jim, he was a computer programmer, analyst. Neither of us had any knowledge about taking care of a very sick child, and we had 2 older children, our daughter Jamie, our son Tony. Tony's 2 years older than Heather, and Jamie is 7 years older than Heather. And when Heather came home, both of them participated in her care, taking care of the trach tube, and she had a feeding hole in her tummy. And the surprising thing is, even though it evaporated most of our day to take care of her, pretty soon it became routine, just like brushing your teeth. It was no big deal. It was just part of our daily routine.
Okay, well, Heather is grown up now, and can you give us an idea of what she does now, and does she have a family?
Yes, when Heather was little, she first dreamed of growing up to become Dr. Mattern, because he gave her the miracle of voice, the miracle of swimming. And then when she was a teenager, she decided she would rather be a nurse. It's a little bit difficult at the time to get into nursing school, so she's very industrious, and she did 1 year of nursing school at St. Kitts and learned about countries that have less advantages, and then she finished in Colorado. The really amazing thing is that she now works in a pediatric intensive care unit. It's the same one where she used to reside, and one of the nurses that used to care for her is who hired her. About her family, when she was a teenager, she worked at McDonald's, and she met Matt there. Matt's now her husband. They have a little daughter, Lily. Lily's a fighter like her mom. It was scary when Lily was born. She was born at 28 weeks, so she was born 3 months early. She didn't have as many problems as Heather did, but it was really scary to think that she might. Premature birth is a very common occurrence. 1/2 million babies are born premature in the U.S. each year, and 13 million in the world. If we can ever get a grip on how to prevent premature births, then we can eliminate the struggles of many, many, many people.
Thank you, Ann. It all sounds very well. Hope life is good to you and smooth sailing from here on out. Let us know where the book can be purchased and about your website and where we can find that more information. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave, for the interview, and thanks, everybody, for your interest. The website is www.voicelesschild.com. There's the links there to where the book can be purchased. It's available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iBook, Google Books, Google Play. It's available both as an ebook and a paperback or hardcover. Thank you, and hope you enjoy the read.